Hello and welcome to official Xbox 360 Magazine's OXM report. And this week we had a chat with Relic about Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, a Gears of War style shooter that takes place in the popular board game's epic sci-fi universe. Cool, so I'm here with Raf van Lierop, who is working on Space Marine, a Warhammer 40,000 game. Obviously this is a pretty rich universe. Could you give us a rundown of the storyline for this game?
Yeah, we're not getting into a lot of specifics about that right now, but sort of the framework of the game is it takes place on a forge world, which is a planet-sized factory dedicated to the manufacturing of war machines, tanks, weapons, and whatnot. It's really kind of the heartbeat of the Imperium. It keeps the war effort flowing. And it's just been invaded by a massive orc army. Millions of orcs led by a war boss have sort of arrived, and the Imperial Guard, the Imperial Navy is mustering a liberation force to kind of come and try and rescue the planet. I mean, it's very bad news if this planet falls into orc hands. It's where the Emperor-class Titan is built, so if orcs get their hands on the Titans or just destroy them or use them against the Imperium, it would be incredibly bad news. So, but because the Imperium is a fairly bureaucracy-heavy type of instrument, this liberation fleet is potentially days or weeks or even longer away. And so in order to kind of address the problem immediately, they send the Ultramarines in. And the Ultramarines are really the elite of the Space Marine chapters. And so you're a Space Marine captain, you're an Ultramarines captain, and you're sent down with your company to deal with the orc threat on the ground. And that's essentially the setup.
So, I mean, you described the Space Marine as the original Space Marine. This guy came before the guy from Doom. Mm-hmm. Tell me a bit more about these 7-foot-tall monsters, basically.
So there's, as you said, they're 7 feet tall. They're, genetically modified. They are trained through hypnosis. They are, hundreds of years old. Their life is all about training and fighting. They are the only thing standing between a massive horde of aliens that just want nothing more than to exterminate humanity, and the Space Marines are what's preventing that from happening. They're steeped in tradition. They're very honorable. They never give up. They're relentless fighters, and really they have no equal on the battlefield. In the lore, they talk about how a single Space Marine can stand against 1,000 orcs, and that's kind of the relationship that you can expect. And we're delivering on that core fantasy of the Space Marine in Space Marine in a way that we feel fans of 40K have never experienced before, and fans of science fiction and action games are going to find just tremendous.
It's interesting that you mentioned the standing against an army, because this is a game that doesn't have a sticky cover system, which is, I think, probably what a lot of people were expecting. Could you explain that decision?
Of course, yeah. Really, as I said, the core fantasy of being a Space Marine is these guys are encased in ceramic armor. They're incredibly strong. They're highly conditioned physically. They can take an immense amount of punishment on the battlefield. And so the core fantasy of being a Space Marine is to be able to stride into the battlefield, take hits from all directions, be surrounded by a massive army of orcs, and just cut through them with your chainsword and take them out with your bolter and just dominate the battlefield. And we felt like a sticky cover system, and we experimented a lot with it. It just didn't feel natural with that fantasy anymore. And really, taking cover is for games where you take a few hits and you're dead. Space Marine's not like that. Space Marines aren't weak. Space Marines are heroes. They're striding onto the battlefield and they just dominate. And that's the reason why we moved away from a sticky cover system.
So one of the things you guys are really emphasizing is this switching between gunplay and a kind of pulled out camera melee system. Tell me how that works.
It's extremely satisfying. It's an instantaneous switch between, really satisfying third-person shooting with the over-the-shoulder camera that everybody's really accustomed to. Because we have this amazing array of weaponry that comes from the 40K IP, we give the player tons of cool guns and toys to play with. But we feel like the magic of Space Marines combat is that relationship between shooting and melee and that instantaneous switch. So you run into a battle, you fire, just decimate enemies with your bolter, and as they close in on you, you instantly can pull out your chainsword and just cleave into them, and it's just dramatic, and you're cutting guys in half, and it's just crazy. It's so satisfying, and it's hard not to feel a sense of glee when you're in the middle of it all.
Now, obviously, Relic has had quite a lot of experience working with Games Workshop, and specifically the Warhammer 40,000 universe. What do those guys like to work with?
They're great. We have a long relationship with Games Workshop. We've been working with them, I think, about 8 years now, since the original Dawn of War. They're great creative partners. We have a really good partnership with them. We talk to them all the time. They come up and visit us, and we really get into the details of the lore and the IP so that we can all understand it really well. They're very supportive of us because obviously in our game we're doing, as with Dawn of War, Space Marine is expressing aspects of the IP that you don't see in the tabletop game, and we're bringing Space Marines to life in a way that nobody's ever seen them before. It's a natural fit for an action blockbuster. I mean, the epic scale of the worlds, the types of enemies, the weapons that you have, the lore is so rich, the fiction is massive. I mean, there's dozens of rule books and codexes, and there's, you know, lots of novels and things that just sort of enrich this whole universe. It's a great place for us to be, and, you know, the partnership with Games Workshop is a very positive one. It allows us to, you know, find all these opportunities to bring out those aspects of the IP.
Obviously, we've seen the Orc army. Any chance of us meeting any other species, Tyranids perhaps?
Anything's possible.
Excellent. Well, Raf, thank you for talking to us.
Thanks very much. It was great talking to you.
For all the exclusive details on Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, pick up the latest copy of OXM on shop shelves this week.